I went from minimum wage to building a $2 million per year agency within just 10 months of starting it. That agency in the real estate niche went on to close 771 clients and collect over $5 million in cash. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down my entire story and journey of over 7 years in the online space. So whether you're watching this video and you're brand new to the space, or maybe you're looking to start an agency, or maybe you're about to close your 500th agency client, this video is going to give you an extremely realistic look into what it looks like to be 7 years into this game, the sleepless nights that it took to get here, and what my entire journey actually looked like to get to this point. So let's just go ahead and dive straight in. So if you do not know me, maybe this is your first time here, my name is John Danes. I am 26 years old. I am UNC status in the space now. In terms of life, I guess I'm not that old. In terms of being in this space where you have 16-year-old millionaires and 12-year-olds driving Bugattis, I am a grandpa. But I started in this space when I was around 19 years old, so I got a little bit of time here in the game. I currently live in North Florida. I'm from Nashville. I guess we'll get into this a little bit more in the video, but I am like a child of the earth. I've moved around so much. I've lived a little bit of everywhere, to be honest with you. Kansas, Missouri, Minnesota, Tennessee. Where else have I lived? Georgia, now Florida. I've lived really all over the place. And a lot of that was actually because of my dad's job. So my dad was in grocery sales, essentially. It's the easiest way to describe what my dad did. And he would lose jobs, like get fired, and we would have to move, or he would get a promotion and we would have to move. So we moved around a ton. And I think that moving around taught me like really valuable skill sets. You have to be able to make friends. You have to be able to socialize. You have to be sort of outgoing if you want to meet people and have friends, because I would get dropped into a new school. As an example, I was a senior in high school when I moved to Minnesota, and I was just meeting all these new people, and I had a job, and I went to this small little school group, which I'll get into why that was here in just a minute. But I learned that, you have to meet people and you have to socialize and you have to talk to people. And I also realized that if you are in a job like my dad was, and I hope you wouldn't mind me saying this, that you are basically always at someone's beck and call. My dad's jobs that he had, if somebody said go, he would have to pick up and go, right? My whole family. When I was like 6 years old, we moved to Nashville, or the Nashville area. We didn't actually live in Nashville, but Nashville area. And I remember there was like a really sad moment for me and my brother. But that's just how it goes sometimes when you're in these corporate jobs where you might have to move around a lot, like the one that my dad had. There was a lot of moving around that was required. So not to get off on a super tangent here, but I think that one of the things that I picked up through that experience, through childhood of moving around a lot, is you have to be outgoing, you have to meet people. And subconsciously, I think the lesson that was planted in me that really bloomed and sprouted as I got older was that if you have a job, you are constantly, to some extent, answering to someone else. And if they say go, a lot of times you're going to have to go. If they say stay, you're going to stay, right? The best thing that I can say is that I grew up with two wonderful parents. My mom and dad are absolutely phenomenal. I grew up in a Christian home, still Christian to this day. I've had struggles throughout life, as we all do, but I grew up to just a wonderful, wonderful family. My mom and my dad are just wonderful. My brothers are great as well. And I think that's the thing that I am the most grateful for. Although there was no family business to dive straight into, and neither of my parents were entrepreneurs, I would just definitely say that like my parents are two of the most lovely people on the planet, and I was super fortunate to grow up to a wonderful family, which with that context is actually pretty wild because I did terrible in school. So although I had and have wonderful parents, my mom stayed home with us, I still, for whatever reason, did absolutely terrible in school. And really the problem was actually waking up in the morning. And so it's kind of a running joke in my family now, because this is, many years ago. But we still joke about this all the time, about how hard it was for me to actually wake up for school in the morning. I hated waking up early, and I just hated school. I literally hated everything about it. I mean, I remember, just sitting in school and having genuine malice in my heart for my teachers. Oh, none of my teachers are watching any of this, because this is like horrible stuff that I'm saying right now. But I remember being like just despising my teachers to the core. I know it's a really horrible thing to say, and that's wrong. And I love all of them, now. And I hope they're all doing great. And I wish nothing bad on any of them, obviously. But that was my experience with school, is that I just absolutely hated and despised my teachers and hated school. And so I did terrible in school. I got very bad grades, and I was constantly misbehaving in school as well. And that actually led me to getting expelled from school in 10th grade. So I actually got expelled from school and became homeschooled, which was like really one of the biggest blessings. But I wasn't homeschooled in the traditional sense. I still went to a small group. It's like a school group every couple of days. So basically there's these programs for homeschool kids where they get to go, and it's basically like different parents are teaching more than just their own children. And so that was like really cool. I definitely did not complete the high school experience in the best way possible. There was a lot of cheating involved on my end, and that showed when I took my ACTs. For the people that took ACTs, I think my highest score was like a 19. So I definitely didn't complete school or do well in school. And I hated school, and I hated my teachers, and I hated everything about school. The only thing that I really enjoyed was hanging out with friends in school and then playing sports. I played baseball, and then in 9th grade, before I got kicked out of school, I actually played tennis because I was not very big nor fast, right? So like in baseball, if you're small, you should be fast. And if you're big, you don't have to be fast because you can kind of hit for power. Well, I was this horrible mix where I was small and slow. And so I was like, okay, I need to play a different sport. Well, all of the attractive girls played tennis, and tennis was like you practiced as a kind of co-ed thing. And so I was like, I think I'd like to play tennis. And all of the, it's horrible to say, all the guys that played tennis were just like super unathletic and uncoordinated. And so I picked up tennis, and I very quickly became like the best player on the tennis team. And there was all these attractive girls there as well. So it was a pretty cool experience in terms of the tennis. But that was the only things I really enjoyed about school was sports and hanging out with my friends. I literally hated everything else. I despised school, despised my teachers. I hated everything about it. And I think that I just felt like the motions of school and kind of the song and dance of school, and just someone consistently telling me what to do. I think that's actually the biggest problem. I think that I disdain being told what to do, specifically from people, and I always have, specifically from people who I don't want their life, right? And I think that it's weird because this is like a popular opinion now or when you're older, but I think I even felt this way when I was like 10 years old, is like, this person's telling me what to do, I have to follow everything that they say, and I don't really want their life, right? And so kind of a bad mindset to have, right? But I think in some ways good, in some ways bad, right? You can't say that about like the government, right? I don't like the government, so I'm not going to do anything they say. I'm just going to break all the laws, right? But at the end of the day, I just think that I had that mindset from day one of like, I don't like school, I don't like anything about school, and the people that are telling me what to do in school, I don't really want their life or want the things that they have, so why should I have to pay attention? And because of that, I got expelled from school, but then finished out homeschooled and probably didn't really get the full school experience because I was homeschooled and because I cheated so much. This was before ChatGPT. I'm showing my old age. But, at the end of the day, I think that because I cheated so much, I didn't really understand all the things that I probably should have learned by being a senior in high school. And like I said, this caused me to get a 19 on my ACT. And with that, I basically had zero job prospects. Now, I had jobs, right? So because I was homeschooled, my parents made me get a job because it was like, well, you're not going to school, the normal 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, you have to get a job. So I did, and I had multiple jobs. I worked at a grocery store, and I was actually very good at all my jobs. So it's kind of funny because I was terrible at school, but I really excelled at all my jobs. So I was like, I'm phenomenal at the grocery store. Like everybody loved me. I got a small raise at all of the grocery stores that I worked at. I worked at multiple. And everybody loved me. And I just, for some reason, I excelled doing that. And these were terrible jobs, by the way, like minimum wage, awful. And I worked at PacSun. If anybody remembers PacSun, it was like a clothing store. I think they're out of business now. But I worked there for a little bit. And then I actually, in the summers, we had a family friend who was an entrepreneur, PJ, who I still talk to very regularly, who I actually used to work with and live with in the summers, which is kind of crazy. So I would actually, we lived in Tennessee at the time, and I'm like 16 or 17. And then he lived in Kansas, and I went and worked with him and lived with him as well. And so he had this big warehouse. He was, like I said, an entrepreneur in the e-commerce space, actually. And he had this big warehouse, and I used to just work in the warehouse in the summers. And I got paid buku bucks, $10 an hour, right? We were really cashing out at that point. But I worked like 80 hours a week. So I was able to actually start to save some money, which was really nice. And getting kicked out of school actually provided me with being able to get a job. And that kind of gave me a little bit of a nest egg and kind of got me in more of a comfortable situation. And then I also realized, like, if you work, you make money. And you need to work hard in order to make money. And I think that was an important lesson to learn. And, when I was 16 or 17, nobody was really like, this was before Iman Gadzhi and before Andrew Tate. Like, nobody was telling 16-year-olds to start businesses, right? So when you're 16, like, everybody would just have a job. And I also, it's another thing, I'm just going to start to remember stuff throughout this video. So I also resold sneakers. So at that time, this was when Yeezy was super big, when Fear of God was really big. Ultra Boost, NMDs, like all of the cool, maybe we can pop some photos up of that style. By the way, 2016 style was peak style, right? With the Yeezys, the Off-White, the Supreme Box logo. I resold all that stuff as well. So I would get online and sometimes get lucky on the Supreme drops or Bape drops or whatever it was and buy stuff, and then you would resell it on eBay. So I'm working my jobs at the grocery store during the school year, working in the warehouse on the weekends in a completely different state, completely new experience, which I think was really good for me as well. I was just hustling and trying to make money in literally any way that I could. But because I had, really no job prospects, I'm trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to actually do. And so nobody that I had ever really known had been an entrepreneur. I know I said this earlier, but neither of my parents were entrepreneurs. Nobody in my family was an entrepreneur. Neither of my brothers were entrepreneurs. I knew zero entrepreneurs until I went and lived with that first mentor in Kansas, PJ, who was an entrepreneur. And he was such a cool example for me. He had never actually gone to college before, or he did go to college and he dropped out, and then he started this super successful business. And this is definitely the hardest working person that I've ever met, like constantly grinding every single day, up at 6, home at midnight, always working. And I was like, well, this is an entrepreneur. He kind of went into business for himself. This is a really cool thing. I think I want to try to do this as well because I don't really have any other options. And the thing is, the best place to operate from when you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur is when you just have absolutely nothing going on, right? I don't think people understand this concept as much as they really should, but like the best time to become an entrepreneur is when you're 18, 19, you have no money, you live with your parents, and you have absolutely nothing to lose. Because I'm in this position where I don't really have any like serious job prospects. I wasn't one of these guys who was like super smart and, got a full ride scholarship to Stanford and then built something for my dorm room, dropped out of, like, that's not who I was, right? It's not who I am. I was somebody who got kicked out of school, flunked a bunch of classes, didn't care about school, and worked crappy jobs to build some income, and then was like, maybe I can do this entrepreneur thing because I was kind of modeling and looking up to PJ, who was the only person I knew who actually had a business. And so I think that is what drove me to being an entrepreneur, because I kind of saw that this is something you can be creative with, which I feel like I always was kind of a creative person, always have been kind of a creative person, but there's also something that you control your own destiny, you control your own luck in so many ways. And I remember one time PJ told me the harder you work, the luckier you end up being. And I remember that quote kind of stuck with me. And it's like, well, if I can just like put my foot on the gas and take action, maybe this is something that I can do. And so that kind of started my entrepreneurial sort of adventure and career. So at this point, I'm in Minnesota and I am enrolling into community college. So my mom basically says, you have to go to college. So you're going to enroll in a community college because when you get a 19 on your ACT, you can't really go to a normal college, right? Your community college is going to be your best bet, which are like kind of the crappy colleges in America. I don't even really understand what a community college is. I think it's just, if you're a moron, you get to go there, right? And so we go to enroll in community college, and my mom and I are walking in. I'll never forget this. I'm 18 years old. It's called Normandale Community College. And remember, at this point, I have a little bit going on for myself. So like, I have some money saved up. I have a job. I'm making decent money. I'm doing the reselling as well. So I'm not like broke, you know? I'm probably making a couple grand, you know, $2.5 maybe a month. Maybe some months I make 3 or 4, on a really good month. And so that's got me in a situation where I kind of have a little bit of confidence of like, I don't need to be here. And so I told my mom as we're walking in, I'll never forget telling her this. I said, Mom, I cannot wait to drop out. And I was like, Mom, you know, Bill Gates dropped out, right? And she's like, where did he drop out of? Or no, maybe I said Mark Zuckerberg. I was like, you know, Mark Zuckerberg dropped out, right? And she's like, yeah, he dropped out of Harvard though. Big difference. So my mom's always had a hilarious sense of humor and always been able to sort of humble me, and she still does, which is great. But yeah, I just didn't want to go to college and I didn't want to pursue that path. So what actually ended up happening was more turbulence kind of in my life because I was still living with my family at the time, and super lucky that, you know, my parents were okay with having me around. My dad's kind of rule was always, as long as you're not on drugs or, you know, really living a sinful kind of life, because again, I grew up in a very Christian home. It's a Sunday as I'm filming this. My dad and I actually went to church together this morning. And my dad's sort of mentality was, as long as you're not living a blatantly sinful life, and as long as you're not directly rebelling against God, basically, it's the easiest way to say it, that you can live at home with your parents. And so, you know, if I would have been doing drugs or doing things that I wasn't supposed to do, I wouldn't have been able to live with them. But because I was living a pretty clean life and working hard, they were cool with me staying around. And so actually what happened is my dad lost his job that we had in Minnesota, and we actually ended up picking up and moving to Georgia. We live in Atlanta, Georgia for maybe 8 to 12 months. And around this time, now I can't go to the community college in Minnesota anymore because we just moved to Georgia. Long distance away from each other. So I proposed the idea to my mom that I would like to have a gap year and just take the year off from going to college and do a gap year. And my mom's like, well, I guess it makes sense because we're moving anyway. And so she's like, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, you know, I have some money saved up. I'm in an okay spot. I've been listening to this guy's podcast, Mr. Casey Adams, a very good friend at this point, which is kind of cool. We don't catch up as much as we can, as I would like to, but there's kind of an interesting thing. Anybody who's had some success in the online space or just business space in general kind of gets this. You will have really good friends that you don't talk to for 6 months or a year at a time. It's kind of my relationship with Casey and a lot of other people in the space. But when you finally do chat again or you have a call, it's just like you're really close again. And so I love Casey Adams. He doesn't know how much he probably did for me and my life. But I used to listen to his podcast, and I was like, hey, there's this kid from Virginia. He started this podcast. He's flown all around the country, and he lives in Arizona now, and he's like super successful. And all he did was like interview all these entrepreneurs. And I was just dying to get around successful people, right? Because I'm not living in Kansas with my mentor and my boss anymore, who I was working for. I'm in Georgia now, and I was just dying to get around successful people. And I think I realized, like, I don't really have any reason for successful people to want to be around me. So I'm going to start a podcast so I can interview these successful people. And I might be messing up the timelines a little bit here. Maybe I had already had the podcast before we went to Atlanta. But anyways, I'm in early stages with this podcast. It's called The No Excuses Show. You can still find some of the episodes online if you just look up The No Excuses Show, John Danes. But anyways, I end up scaling this podcast. It ends up being a top 100 business podcast in the world. I end up interviewing all these really cool people. Grant Cardone was one of the guests on the show. Frank Kern. A bunch of like really cool, successful people. And about 30 episodes in, I interviewed Dan Martell, which is really cool now. Before Dan Martell was super famous, which is kind of cool. I interviewed the founder of Close.com, which was cool, Steli F. I interviewed a bunch of people. And I realized the problem with this is I am not making any money from doing this, okay? So I'm not making any money from the podcast, and I have this little tiny bit of savings, but I'm not making any money. And I understand that I have this 1 year gap to kind of make money, or my mom is going to say, hey, you got to go to college. So I'm kind of feeling a little bit like I'm in a bind. What ends up happening again is I guess I'm 19 at this point. My dad gets fired from the Georgia job, and we moved back to Tennessee. And so we moved back to Tennessee. So I've moved multiple times in a pretty short period of time. I go back to Tennessee, and I have decided, I actually remember when I decided, at a bowling alley, actually on New Year's Eve, I think it was probably 2018, New Year's Eve 2018, or 2017 maybe, that I was going to start a marketing agency. And I kind of made the decision, okay, I'm going to start a marketing agency. Reason being, there's a few reasons. I had interviewed a lot of successful people through the podcast that had marketing agencies, okay? Iman, obviously, interviewed him. That's how we became friends and kind of started to meet each other. I interviewed Jeremy Haynes, and I just decided that I wanted to start a marketing agency for this reason. And I was already interested in the business model because there was actually a guy that I worked with, and some of this stuff is going to be a tiny bit out of order because it's been a while. So I don't talk about this every day. I don't even really talk about myself all that much. So this is kind of a weird video to make anyway. But point is, this guy that I worked with at one of the grocery stores, actually the grocery store that I worked at in Minnesota for a little bit, had 1 or 2 clients. Chandler, we still talk. Maybe Chandler will see this video. Hope Chandler's doing well. He actually was in one of the Tai Lopez SMMA programs, right? This was probably the OG SMMA program. And I asked him, being the bum that I was, if I could have his login to the SMMA program. And so I went through it a little bit, but I didn't take any action, right? I'm like 18 at the time. I just didn't do anything with it. Like this whole starting a podcast thing was brand new, and this whole SMMA thing was brand new. So I kind of went with the podcast direction. And then as I interviewed more people, I interviewed a lot of guys that had successful agencies. And I kind of learned, okay, this agency model doesn't take a lot of money to start up with, right? So I get the agency started, and I had a couple different business partners. Actually, didn't work out with any of the business partners that I had. I just kind of picked friends. I knew nothing about business. The guys that I partnered up with knew less about business than I did, and I knew nothing. So anyways, I'm trying to get the agency going. We end up moving back to Tennessee, my family, and I start to reconnect with all of my old friends. So there's actually an old friend, sort of a new friend, who is a friend of all of the old friends, named Mr. Adam Artemis, okay? And Adam has had this crazy, I'm not gonna air out all of Adam's details, but Adam's had kind of some strange things happen to him, which bring him to Tennessee. And he had just kind of moved there, and we sort of became friends. We started to chat, and Adam was actually doing the same thing that I was doing, which was the eBay kind of arbitrage stuff that I was doing. So I'm like selling stuff on eBay. I'm reselling things at this point. I'm buying sneakers and reselling them. And then I also started to like go to Ross or TJ Maxx or whatever and try to find stuff to resell. Again, stuff's just going to start to come to me as I make this video, because I don't talk about this stuff or even really think about this stuff. I'm more of a future thinker. So as I'm going through this stuff, things are coming back to me, but I normally only think about the future, not really the past. I'm helping Adam with the eBay kind of arbitrage stuff, helping him with different things and showing him what to do and kind of putting him on some game. And we start to bond over this eBay arbitrage thing. And I'm like, hey, dude, I think I want to start a marketing agency. I'm already working on this podcast. Maybe I had not had the podcast yet. I don't know the dates. Adam can help cross-verify the dates. But anyways, I decided that I want to start up a marketing agency. Adam is graduating college, and I convinced my parents to let Adam move into our house. So my parents are the OGs for this, because we still could have made it work, but it was very convenient to have Adam living with us at the time. Adam is actually living with me and my family, which is like, again, God bless my parents. They're the greatest for being okay with this. But again, we weren't doing anything wrong. We weren't getting into trouble. We were just trying to build our business. And I think that here's really what I think it is. I think my parents realized how much I hated school how bad I did in school, how little I cared about school, and how little care I had really ever had for anything in life, to be honest. Kind of sounds like depressive and kind of sad. But I think my parents would probably vouch, like if I had to do a little side panel with my parents, I just never cared about anything. Didn't care about school. I didn't care about things like the normal person maybe would. And I think that they saw, wow, he's found this kind of business thing and he really cares about this. And so they were like, well, if we can have this random dude move into our house with us, then, maybe this will make John happy and maybe this will be something that he can commit himself to, right? And so that's what happened. And so Adam moves in, we're living together, and this is around 2019, and I'm working on the podcast and we're getting the marketing agency going. It was called 99 Media at the time. And so what Adam and I are doing is we're going all around Nashville and we're just hustling for deals. We're just trying to find deals. We're kind of we called ourselves a performance marketing agency, but we're just going around hustling and just trying to get clients. And we start to make a little bit of noise. So I get a social media management client, like $1,000 a month. It was actually a guy that I interviewed on my podcast. We're also doing some press deals. So there was a time, 2019-ish, where you could basically get articles on different random websites and feature people and do publications and stuff. So I would interview people on the podcast, then we'd get them featured, and we started to do like 10 or 12 grand a month, but it was all from the press. It wasn't really from the recurring marketing agency services. So we'd have like a 12 grand month, and from the articles, because I was meeting people from the podcast, people were starting to know me from the podcast, and then we would sell people press packages because I was starting to get a little bit of a personal brand at the time. So we're doing like 12 grand each month or 15 grand some months with the press deals, and we're doing like 1 or 2 grand a month with the recurring clients. And so we end up picking up a couple clients. Everybody's normally local. So we get a guy who's doing a real estate thing. He's like 3 grand a month. A guy who did insurance who was doing like who paid 2,500 or 3 grand a month. And we actually ended up getting a health and wellness spa. I can make a whole different video about this. Crazy happenings. I don't want to go into the whole story, but this health and wellness spa, Adam and I ended up working there full time. We found out that it didn't really appear as it had seemed, and we ended up leaving, and we lost some of our clients because we went like super deep on this one client. I learned this lesson the hard way. Like if you get a client and you end up like going all in on the one client, that's normally not a good idea because you end up becoming like a full-time employee and you end up caring about the client's business more than you care about your own business. So anyways, we make mistakes for like a year. Mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. I end up seeing a program called Traffic and Funnels. I don't feel any reservations with saying their name. You can look up Traffic and Funnels on Google and have fun with what you see. But we end up joining their program for $9,800. By no means should we have been in said program, because we're basically just like a random marketing shop where we're doing PR for some people. We have a few random clients we're doing like social media management for. We're trying to figure out ads. We're kind of scatterbrained, and we end up joining this $10,000 program, which we cannot afford, by the way, because we're only making like 12 grand a month. And we joined this program, and the one thing that we pick up from the program is this like Facebook messages, Facebook groups kind of thing. It was more so join Facebook groups. And so we start joining these Facebook groups, and we decided we're going to start trying to join real estate Facebook groups. Because side note, Adam and I were actually going to become real estate agents. So this is crazy. Like all the stuff that we're doing is so crazy. I hope Adam watches this, because like it's even weird to conceptualize all the crap we were trying to do. So we were also going to try to become real estate agents. And we felt like none of the real estate agents really knew how to do marketing. So we maybe felt like, okay, we don't want to be real estate agents, but maybe we can do marketing for real estate agents. Join some Facebook groups. I start to message some real estate agents, and we end up getting one as a client. So we sell this guy on a $3,800 package. Never forget it. I did the sales call. I remember exactly where I was. We're at my parents' house. We're grinding it out, staying up super late and trying to build stuff and this sort of thing. So we get this real estate guy, $3,800, and it's actually, we sell him a coaching program, because Traffic and Funnels, their whole thing was build a coaching program. So we're like, okay, we bought this 10K program. We're going to do what we learned how to do in this program, which was coaching, essentially. And so we were going to coach this realtor on how to run his own Facebook ads. So it's like the blind leading the blind. Like, we are not good at Facebook ads at this point. Adam, of course, handled all the fulfillment. I never did fulfillment. So Adam, I get on and sell this guy. Adam is coaching this guy on how to launch his own Facebook ads. Somehow, this guy gets phenomenal results, right? He closes like 5 deals and he's super ecstatic and super happy. Because of my sort of connections with my podcast, we're going into the new year, I guess, of, when would this be? I guess we're going into maybe 2019, or are we going into 2020? No, we're going into 2020 at this point. We're going into 2020. We have this one Facebook ads coaching client in real estate that we've done well for. All of my connections for the press stuff is completely fading out because I've already sold everyone press, and I don't really know how to generate new clients with it. So we decide that we want to kind of go deep on agency stuff like Facebook ads and these sort of things. So because I've got some pretty good connections with my podcast, we get invited to the ClickFunnels event in Nashville, which is crazy because I think it's the last one they did in Nashville. And we don't actually go to the event because we're broke. I mean, like, we got a payment plan with Traffic and Funnels on their 10K program, and like, we're just trying to figure out how to make money. And so, you know, I know we're making $12,000 a month and like we have no expenses, but for whatever reason, we're broke. I don't know what we were spending money on, but we're broke. And so we get invited to a party, actually, with all of these like pretty high status guys in the marketing and kind of info space because I have my podcast. Because like at this point, I've already interviewed Grant Cardone. So like, I have a good podcast. That's how people know me. Nobody knows me as a marketer yet. Everybody knows me as a podcast guy. So we start talking to these 2 guys who are top students of Iman at the time, actually. Marketing agency guys. They got a med spa agency that's doing $30,000 a month. And they're like, you guys are using Go High Level, right? And we're like, Go what? Who? What are you talking about? So they show us Go High Level, and this is in 2020, by the way. So I feel like I'm like an OG Go High Leveler because this is the beginning of 2020. This is before COVID. So this is like January of 2020, before there was a few COVID cases happening, but nobody had really talked about COVID yet. We got shown Go High Level, and we're like, what if we do the marketing thing that we did for the realtor in Houston, done for you, and we plug in the Go High Level? We did it. We decided this is what we're going to do. It's January of 2020, and we just start absolutely fucking ripping. Like, legitimately, we start, it's Jan of 2020. I have highlights on my story of this, by the way. You can go back to January of 2020, February of 2020, and we just start fucking ripping. We start doing outreach. Our outreach starts to work because our offer, oh my gosh, I almost knocked over my coffee there. That was a real thing. We're going to keep that in the video. Our outreach is good because our offer is good, because we're like, hey, we're going to generate you leads and we're going to do all the follow-up. And we just bink $30K a month in a month. We have the ClickFunnels event in January. In February, we're doing $30K a month. Like, almost like an overnight success. But again, I've been in this space trying to figure out what I'm going to do at this point for like 2 years already. Everything that I think I've learned from the podcast and all these successful people that I've met, and like, you know, just grinding it out, and all these meetings that I've had, and like all these in-person pitches that I've done, and like these random things that I've pitched people on that like aren't even really good offers, and like trying to objection handle and like close people without case studies and all this kind of stuff, led us into, okay, now we have the offer. Now it's going to rip, you know, it's going to rip. And so like in February, we're doing $30K a month. We're ripping. We actually move into an office. So I'm still living with my parents, but we get an office because we felt like we couldn't get any work done at my parents' house anymore because it was extremely distracting and it was not an optimal environment. So we get an office, still living with my parents, but we just got an office now. And so it's actually funny. If you see my agency navigator student success story, right? I think at this time they're like saying I'm doing 18K or 30K a month or whatever it is. I think we were doing around 30K per month at the time. I don't even know the details, but we were doing 30K a month within like 30 days, right? But you can watch the interview that I did with Iman, and that's actually when I'm at my office. You can check my stories for like the exact timelines and stuff. Again, I don't think about this stuff almost ever. This is the first time I've even visited this in a long time. But that was actually at my office, the time I did an interview with Iman. I've got this like metal kind of thing in the background. That was the office that Adam and I moved into. And we just start ripping. Like, we're ripping, we're doing super, super well. So we got these 30 clients. We lose all of them within like a month. So like we do month-to-month agreements with everyone, and we end up losing all of them. And so I'm like, okay, dude, well, we got to go get clients again. And so that's what we do. And at this time, we've officially rebranded to Realtor Domination. That is our the name of our agency. So we're Realtor Domination, and we are trying to dominate the real estate space. And so what ends up happening is we get a cease and desist letter from the National Association of Realtors. So the National Association of Realtors reaches out to us and says, hey, you can't actually use the word realtor because that is an owned trademark by our association. You have to either change your name or we're going to sue you. So we change our name very quickly to Commission Accelerator. And so I know I kind of cut the story off a little bit, but we get to 30K a month, we lose all our clients, and then we just do the exact same thing again and scale right back up. So same outreach, reaching back out to people, like it worked once, we know it's going to work again. We scale right back up again to, I think at this point we had hit like 40K a month-ish. I think our biggest month in 2020 was around 40K a month, if I'm getting my dates correct. I think 48K a month. At this time, I'm starting to now seek some counsel, starting to get some help. Solomon says in Proverbs that the wise go to war with a multitude of counselors. You ever want some real wisdom? You need to crack open one of these bad boys, okay? Doesn't matter which one. This is the one that I prefer. But Proverbs got a lot of good wisdom. That's from Solomon. That is many, many, many moons ago. The wise go to war with a multitude of counselors. So we start to get help. I'm in Iman's program. I'm in the Traffic and Funnels program. And then I learn of this gentleman named Judge Graham, who is a 2-time super successful agency owner. Not like the typical agency bro, kind of like me, to be honest. Not like me, like actually really freaking successful. Like exited one agency for 8 figures, like big 8 figures, not like 12 million, like big 8 figures, and then exit another agency for 9 figures. Super successful guy, makes tons of money, and he ends up kind of mentoring us, really for fun, but I think he kind of just enjoyed pouring into young companies, and that was something that he had a sort of a passion for. And so he's really big on positioning, naming, branding, these sort of ideas. So we decide that we're going to have to come up with a good name if we want to break the ceiling of like 7 figures a year. We learned that we need to become like a real business, right? Talking to him, and I told him about the whole Realtor Domination thing. We got absolutely smashed on the name. We had to change the Commission Accelerator. That's a shitty name. It's too long. We didn't even have the .com, or we had the .com, but we had a dash. So it was Commission Accelerator. Pain in the ass, terrible name. He asked us who's the biggest competitor that we have. And we're doing all this competitive analysis. That's something that I teach my clients to do, and that's something that Judge was big on doing as well. Our biggest competitor at the time is called Bold Leads. And so I'm talking to Judge, and I'm like, dude, what should we name our company? And it's funny because now I actually help a lot of the clients in AC name their businesses, just like Judge helped me name mine, which is kind of cool. But he's like, I like elements. I like Jolt, Torque. And he was like, what about Jolt Leads? And I was like, well, that sounds too similar to our competitor Bold Leads. I think it's not gonna work. And then I was like, well, hey, what about LeadJolt? Boom, LeadJolt. He's like, dude, I freaking love it. Can you get the and then I look up on GoDaddy if I can get the .com. It's $1,300. I remember buying it instantly. Probably the best ROI I've ever made on anything that I've ever invested in. And so we rebrand to LeadJolt, and we're at around 40K a month, and then we start to run ads, and because we're pretty much all outbound, and then we turn on ads, and our ads just start printing, and our ads are doing super well. We're scaling. We're starting to really hit new levels. And I actually hire Iman's agency to consult on my ads. So I hire IEG Media. We're probably gonna have to pop up a ton of pictures for this. One of them will be me, Iman, Danny, and Adam on a call. And Iman is consulting us, and he's like, dude, you have the best numbers that I've ever seen. This is 2020. We're just absolutely ripping on Facebook ads. We're getting like $20 appointments, and I'm closing like 1 in 4, or something stupid, right? Like, I think our CAC, maybe it wasn't that. Our CAC was like $200 on a $1,500 a month retainer. And so we're pretty much banking. We're like, we've rebranded. I think we rebranded probably in June. And so like LeadJolt officially started in, I guess, June of 2020. And we're kind of off to the races. Well, this is all while COVID's going on, right, as well. So like we can't really move around. There's not much going on. I decide that I'm going to move to Nashville. I'm going to move out of my parents' house, and I'm going to move to my first apartment because I really believe, and I still believe, that environment is super important, and identity and all this kind of stuff. And I'm now at a point where I'm taking out the trash because my mom asked me to, and I have a multi-6-figure a year business, nearly 7-figure a year business. I'm like, Mom, I have the best ROAS numbers that Iman Gadzhi has ever seen before, and you're gonna ask me to take out the trash, like, So I'm like, I gotta get the fuck out of here, right? And I love my parents to death, but I'm like, I gotta leave now, right? And so I move into an apartment, nice apartment. It's my first apartment. It's a really big deal for me. And January of 2021, as soon as I move into my apartment, we do $110,000 that month. And then we pretty much just scale from there. And then we pretty much just go on a rocket ship trajectory of growth. We were really running a business that relied very heavily on client acquisition because of so many bottlenecks with fulfillment and hiring and all of the problems that the old model had. The old model had a ton of problems, really because fulfillment was so hard. We would get 30, 40, I think our biggest month we closed 54 clients in a month. That's so much hiring, it's so much manpower, it's so much new team, and it's really hard to keep up with all of that demand. And so we just end up burning out. And we really just end up putting ourselves in this position where every single month we have to get more and more and more clients just to stay at the same revenue level. And so Adam and I kind of make the mutual decision that this isn't fruitful anymore and that we want to work on something else. And we had an amazing run, 800 clients nearly closed, over $5 million in cash collected, worked with a ton of amazing team and staff. But we're just getting to this point where the juice is no longer worth the squeeze. And so many of my other agency friends have had a similar problem. When I saw Eddie Malouf in 2023, he said something to me along the lines of, it's a super hard model to run, and you did it longer than anyone, and churn sucks for everybody. I remember Eddie told me that in Dubai when I was with Iman, and that really meant a lot. It was a small thing that he said. He'll never see this video, but like Eddie, he doesn't know how much those words meant to me, because it was an emotional thing. Like, it was a fucking emotional thing, and I get sad talking about it now. But it was just, you reach a point where you're having to close more and more and more and more clients each month just to keep up with, the scale that you're at. And you're having to hire tons of people, and you're just having to run a lot bigger business than you ever really plan on running. And then what ends up sort of happening from there is I go work with Iman and kind of am helping him with some stuff, because Iman and I obviously had a very, very close relationship. I worked with him for about a year, helping him with some of his programs and coaching a bunch of people within his programs. And I realized, hey, I really like this working with agency owners thing. I got a lot of good feedback in Iman's group, and a lot of the people in there said that I really helped them and was able to kind of solve bottlenecks for them, because agency was like what I lived for so long. And it's actually funny because most people get their agency going, then they launch their info. I actually never wanted to launch info. I just wanted to work on my agency, and kind of ended up stumbling into the info. It wasn't like, when I talk about my agency journey, it's very different than the average person's, because the average person is kind of in this position where they have some good months with their agency. They're actually not as good of an agency owner as they think they are, or as they really think they are, to be honest. And then they just end up launching info, and then they're like, oh, I made $100K a month with my agency, and they only really did it 1 month. And so for us, we had a completely different trajectory. We built and scaled an incredibly successful agency that really, if it weren't for the bottlenecks of fulfillment and hiring and HR and all these things, would have been a massive, massive agency. And, you see people that are playing that game, like Eddie. I mentioned Eddie earlier, but, Eddie Malouf has 200 people working for him. And I just really wasn't ready to undertake that at 22 or 23 years old. And I think I was burnt out because of all the hiring and firing and revolving door. I think that's really what the agency model was for a lot of people. A lot of my friends as well. It was kind of a revolving door where you would bring a new group in, phase them out, bring a new group in, phase them out, bring a new group in, phase them out. And it really created this revolving door model. And I think that's why so many people actually just stopped running their agencies and, eventually phase them out. So I go to work with Iman, work with him for about a year, have some really amazing experiences. Iman's an amazing person. I love him to death. He's done a ton of things for me. He's helped me so much. And I've been very fortunate to know him since 2019. We did a podcast. He helped me with some of my agency ads. He helped me with my agency in general. We worked together at Educate, which was great. and I love him to death, and will never have a bad word to say about him, off camera or on camera. He's an amazing person. But I realized very quickly, again, like, I don't want to work for anyone. Even if it's somebody that I respect, love, and admire, I don't want to work for anyone. And it's nothing against him. It's just that that's not the life that I really want to live, or really what I think God has planned for my life. So I end up leaving, launching agency clients, what we kind of call V1 in 2024. Work with a bunch of agency owners, a lot of agency owners scaling, and a lot of them having really the same problems that I had. Not because of anything that I did wrong or they did wrong, but just because of the model and the broken fulfillment model that came with a traditional SMMA or a traditional agency. And so at the end of 2024, mixed within that, I worked with Paul Daley a couple times. For any of those guys have seen, for any of you guys who have seen Paul Daley on YouTube, phenomenal person, was Iman's CEO. I'd known Paul because Paul also had a real estate marketing agency that we were competitors, and obviously he became CEO at Iman's, and we became very close. And when I left, we worked together for a little bit, and then in 2025, we worked together again a little bit as well. And I think we both realized that we have very overlapping skill sets, and that as much as we love each other, I don't think we're meant to run a business together. And with that, God's timing always works out, right? And his timing is always amazing if it doesn't seem amazing at the time, right? There's so many different things that happen with me and my journey, and even like so grateful actually that I did this video, because when I got kicked out of school, that was weird timing, but that opened a door for me. And when we moved and I wasn't able to go to community college, that opened a door for me. And just so many doors opened. And I think that the most recent door that's opened is this door of AI, because it's really solved the majority of fulfillment problems that hurt my agency and that hurt so many other agencies before me. I think a lot of people probably see me and like my passion for this space and probably wonder like, dude, why do you care so much? Because so many people have come and gone from agency. And I think the reason that I care so much is because, as I've described in this video, this model changed my life. It wasn't coaching, it wasn't e-com, it wasn't Amazon FBA, it wasn't being a remote closer, it was starting an agency. The model changed my life. And I think me and a handful of other people can say that, but I made money and scaled an agency, right? I made money with and scaled an agency. I wasn't one of these guys. And again, I know I've talked about the Bible and being a devout Christian in this video, so I don't want to sit on here and trash talk people, but I'm not one of these guys that had one big month and then started selling coaching. I had a legitimate agency. And anybody who's been around in the game, and I say this humbly, but anybody who's been around knows we had a serious powerhouse of an agency, right? The reason that this is so important to me is because this model changed my life, and it's changed the lives of many people that I know. And the ultimate downside with this model was always fulfillment. Because as I sort of alluded to in the video, once I was able to figure out offer, appointment setting, and closing, we just started to rip. We just started to get tons of clients, right? As I said, like we got to 30K a month, like instantly, And it's because we figured out offer, appointment setting, and closing. But the problem was always fulfillment. And now with AI has solved a lot of the issues of fulfillment, because AI does a lot of the fulfillment for you, where in the past you had to hire massive teams and manage people and look after people. And now with AI solves a lot of that problem. So now in 2026, we are into agency clients V2, which is, we launched in 2024. We crushed it for a bunch of clients. A bunch of people did super well. Took a little bit of a hiatus in 2025. And now in 2026, agencies are, I think we're in a real revival of agencies. And, for a while it was agencies are dead, SMMA is dead, et cetera, et cetera. But now in 2026, because of AI, there's quite a revival happening with agencies, and I'm very excited to be a part of that. And I'm very excited to equip the next generation of agency owners with the tools to scale, and being able to be supported by AI, I think is huge. So now where John Danes is currently at is helping agencies who want to start or scale through agency clients. And we're also working on our proprietary leads software for agency owners who need leads, because one of the biggest problems is getting leads, and that is called agency leads. So my little portfolio of businesses here is agency clients, helping agencies start or scale to 100K a month, and agency leads, which allows agency owners to easily be able to get high intent quality leads on demand. So this is an extremely long video. This is John Danes. This is my story. I hope it was entertaining for you. I hope that you get a little peek into my journey. And even my first wins might have seemed like quick wins, but they were built on a 3 year foundation. So what might have seemed like he hit $2 million a year run rate in 10 months. It was a lot of work that was leading up to that, and a lot of failures and a lot of trial and error and a lot of BS behind the scenes. And of course, I could do another whole video on my journey just with my agency and all the problems that we ran into with my agency, right? I could do a whole video on that. And so I love this space. I'm excited to continue playing in the sandbox that is agencies, now AI agencies. And so if you're a person who's serious and who wants to scale an AI agency, either who has one currently or wants to start one and wants to embark on this journey and ultimately be able to scale to 100K a month, click below this video, schedule a call with me. Within agency clients, I work extremely personally with every single client. When I talk about some of my journey, the coaching that I got the most out of, and I spent so much money on coaching. In total, throughout my career, I spent over $1 million on coaching, masterminds, ads, and reinvesting right into myself. And really the only thing that was ever valuable was one-on-one. So when I created agency clients, I said what we're going to give as the ultimate value is going to be a ton of one-on-one, not with a coach, but with me personally. That's what we do at AC. If you're interested in working one-on-one with me in order to start or scale your AI agency, go below this video, fill out the application, schedule a call, and you and I will chat about what that would look like. So love you lots. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it didn't bore the absolute shit out of you. It was really cool for me to be able to reflect on this, especially on Sunday. Seeing how far I've come is kind of cool. Hope that this was helpful. I love you lots. If you're an agency owner, agencyclients.com. I'll see you there. All right, peace.